Welcome to The Explainer. When a loved one with dementia suddenly becomes aggressive, it can be terrifying. Today, we're going to break down a really clear step-by-step guide to help you understand what's happening and, most importantly, find a way to get from chaos back to calm. You're trying to kill me. Just imagine hearing those words from your own father. And this isn't some made-up scenario. It comes from a real family story that's going to guide us through this today. It's a frightening reality for so many caregivers, and we're going to use this story to find some really practical, real-world solutions. So let's start with the story of Mr. Jung. He's an 80-year-old retired teacher, he has Alzheimer's, and his family was taking care of him at home when all of a sudden they found themselves in a really, truly dangerous situation. And yeah, this right here is the very definition of a crisis. He had this delusion that his family was trying to poison him or fill his room with gas, and it led him to arm himself with a kitchen knife. You can just imagine the fear and confusion in that house, not just for him, but for everyone. So to figure out how to handle this, we have to understand where it's coming from. What is actually happening inside the brain that causes something like this? The single most important thing to get your head around is this: it is not a choice. It's a symptom of the disease itself. And you know what? It's an incredibly common symptom. Research shows that up to 90%, that's 9 out of 10 individuals with dementia, experience behavioral things like delusions, hallucinations, or aggression. So if you are going through this, you are so far from alone. And that really changes how we look at the whole problem, doesn't it? This aggression isn't just random anger. It almost always boils down to one of three things: physical changes happening in the brain, a simple misunderstanding of what's going on around them, or it's their way of trying to tell you something's wrong, that they have an unmet need. At the end of the day, this behavior is communication. It's a desperate signal. Okay, so you're in the middle of this chaos. How in the world are you supposed to respond? Well, thankfully, experts have put together a really clear, structured way forward that gives caregivers both a strategy and, honestly, a sense of hope. This approach is all about switching gears, from just reacting in a panic to being proactive and prepared. It's about having a plan. You start by trying to figure out the trigger, and you always try non-medical approaches first. Part of that plan is figuring out what kind of aggression you're actually dealing with. Is it reactive, a sudden outburst because they're confused or frustrated? Or is it planned, something driven by a persistent delusion, like in Mr. Zhang's case? Knowing that difference is absolutely key to figuring out the best way to respond. All right, this brings us to the most important part of your toolkit, the practical, non-drug strategies that you can actually use day in and day out to de-escalate these situations and, even better, prevent them from happening in the first place. Before you say or do anything else, the absolute first step is to validate their emotion. Look, the reason for their fear might not be real, but the fear itself, it's 100% real to them. You have to acknowledge that feeling first. And this is exactly what Mr. Zhang's son did. He didn't argue. He didn't say, "Dad, you're wrong, that's crazy." No, he immediately connected with the real terror his father was feeling. By acknowledging that feeling, he started building a bridge back to a calmer place. These techniques are just vital. I mean, trying to argue or reason with someone who's having a delusion, it only makes things worse. It ramps up the agitation. The goal here isn't to win an argument. It's to lower the emotional temperature by making them feel safe and then gently guiding their focus somewhere else. And this is just a brilliant illustration of how the family put it all together. They acknowledged his fear, and then they cleverly redirected him to a warm, positive memory, the grilled mackerel his late wife used to make for him. And when he worried the food was poisoned, his daughter-in-law just took a bite first to prove it was safe. It was that combination of empathy, reassurance, and redirection that brought Mr. Zhang back from that state of crisis. So, how you react in the moment is critical, for sure. But being proactive and managing the environment is just as powerful. A predictable routine, a calm space, and, as we saw with Mr. Zhang's knife, removing any potentially dangerous items. These things can stop a crisis before it even has a chance to start. But what happens when you've tried all these non-drug methods and it's just not enough to keep everyone safe? Well, this is when you have to consult a doctor about medication. But this is a step you have to take with extreme caution and always with professional guidance. So this table kind of lays out the main options.
Sometimes the drugs they take for memory or an underlying depression can also help with aggression. But it's that third category, the antipsychotics, where we really need to pay close attention. This is not some minor side effect in the fine print. This is what's known as a black box warning. It is the most serious warning drug regulators can issue. It means there is a significant risk of death. Now, these drugs can be used in really severe cases, but the risks are huge, and they should only ever be a last resort used under very close medical supervision.
So we've gone through all these different strategies, from how you talk, to the environment, to medication. But what's the one single thread that ties every single effective approach together?
Let's just pause on that question for a second, because the answer is, well, it's deceptively simple. But it is, without a doubt, the hardest and also the most important part of this entire caregiving journey. At the end of the day, it really comes down to this: patience and understanding. And these aren't just nice ideas, you know? They are the active foundation that every single one of these successful strategies is built on. Without them, none of the techniques will work.
Remembering these key points can help you reframe this incredibly difficult challenge. It's all about seeing the person, not just the disease. It's about leading with empathy and having a real plan to navigate the chaos. Look, this journey is daunting, there's no question. But it doesn't have to be one you face with just fear. You can face it with a framework for compassionate and effective action.